This video is all about why I hate John A. Lee. Because I thought, might not look demonic while I'm talking about a demon. And I come with receipt. Apart from this one. Not really. Okay. Anyway, so this is my goat Michael Joseph Savage's biography. I was about to say autobiography. I had to pause for a second. And then John A. Lee, a little book that he wrote. Okay. Now, looking back at some videos on my camera roll, I hate filming with glasses, just saying that because you can see what I'm seeing. But anyway, yeah, I'm watching porn and I don't want you to see that. Just kidding. I'm not doing that. I don't want you. Yeah, so the sound is kind of bad, but I was watching a video from a popular person and the sound kept on cutting out. So, at least it's kind of working. Right, now, let's start by introducing the main characters in the story. Michael Joseph Savage. Wait, I'll show you a little photo. See if you can see the appeal. Michael Joseph Savage and John A. Lee. You don't get a better photo than this, else you'll be flashed by his fat fucking nose. Now, I really like Michael Joseph Savage. It's kind of the whole reason I have this very negative view towards John A. Lee. I think that Savage and his counterpart, is that the right word? No. And his colleagues in the Labour Party, especially the first Labour Party, they were very, very impressive in the way that they worked so hard for New Zealanders. And just fake Stanley. I was thirsty in this. And how, literally, he basically kind of put his life on the line, if you think about it. He knew how much the wealthiest state would help, and when the National Party were like, if we get elected, we'll not put the welfare state in place. He was the face of the Labour Party, and he was low-key dying of cancer. He was like, I'm going to go out on the campaign trail because I'm the face of the Labour Party, and everyone kind of loves me. And yeah, he missed out on surgery for doing that. He read lots of books on different economic states, and I think really truly believed in the good of the country and wanted to help, even if he wouldn't live to see it, which is something I really admire, and I would admire to be like him someday. Yeah, I just think he's pretty cool. Because he worked so hard for New Zealanders when he wasn't even from New Zealand, and he could have been selfish and been like, yeah, I want money, I want a big house, I want all of these things. He boarded his almost his entire life, apart from when he lived in the house that that prime ministers get. You could argue it might have been on in a place that it wasn't accepted back in the day, but he lived if he was gay or something, that's an argument. He lived by himself. He didn't live by himself. He boarded, but he didn't get married. He devoted his entire life to New Zealand. Well, almost his entire life. He moved in 1908 or 9. But before that, he was I think he worked for a union in Aussie where he was living, and yeah, he just seems like a pretty chill guy. Whereas John A. Lee, now where do I start? Let me start at the end of his big fat fucking nose. Okay? Because it's 3 times bigger than Peter Fraser's, and Peter Fraser's one is one big snooter. That doesn't make sense. Okay. Now, John A. Lee. I will give him credit where credit's due. Apparently he was a very good orator, a very good speaker. But he just seems very kind of disingenuous, if that's the right word. Sometimes words appear in my mind and I'm like, I think that's the right word, but at the same time I'm not. He seems very selfish in what he does. And kind of like, I'm the center of the world. Why aren't you treating me like I'm the center of the world kind of shit? I think that he would be, if he existed in this day and age, he would love that exhibition, that thing in carnivals. Maybe they still have it. Maybe they had it back then in like circuses where the whole thing is just mirrors and all you see is yourself. Yeah, he would have loved that. Apart from if he gets flashed with that big fat fucking noggin. Like, not the noggin, the nose. See, I don't like swearing. To be fair, I do it a lot, but I try not to nowadays. Trying to be a better person, you know. But yeah, when it comes to John A. Lee, there's just something about this little shit that makes me want to swear. Yeah, I probably should have said this earlier. If you're in any way related to John A. Lee, please don't be offended. This is about John A. Lee. I'm sure you're a lovely person. I'm sure he was a lovely person. I'm just taking it someone on face value. Now, another thing about John A. Lee is that he wasn't a pacifist. Now, a lot of members of the Labour Party were pacifists. I mean, Savage did, I think, at one point. He was against conscription, but he did join a camp when it was necessary to protect the country. This is in World War One. But I don't think he did anything further than that. And Peter Fraser was a conscientious objector, so. But this little guy, he fought in the war. His arm got blown off. Yet when he comes back, when there was a lot of, yeah, he'd seen the horrors of war, and he's still like, yeah, I fuck with war. Now, next point, there's the Lee letter, which is, you know, he wanted to be in cabinet, in caucus cabinet, either one of the two, I can't remember. And Savage was like, no, you're not a very good person. And then, yeah, Lee wrote a letter about them, and it wasn't very polite, I would say. Now, I have no doubt to some extent Lee was an okay kind of guy. He probably, getting into Parliament must have been a lot as well. I'm not denying that, and to be fair, I'm just trying to fill some space right now. But let's get some stuff out. This page 260 in From the Cradle to the Grave. I'm going to just read the important bit. The first part of the article, this is written by Lee, the article, discuss the dangers of political leaders achieving such popularity that they become high priests of a new cult, whose followers believe that they were infallible, for in them ideas are incarnate. Such leaders become hypocritical autocrats. Indeed, Woodrow Wilson in the United States, Ramsay MacDonald in Britain, and Joseph Ward in New Zealand had become pathological cases, their physical illness being reflected in their mental conditions. They had become a dead but as yet unburied legend. Without naming Savage, Lee then went on to write of a New Zealand politician who was one of the mildest and apparently sweetest-tempered persons in his waking hours, but in his subconscious dream world was as crazy as a man in delirium tremens. A foul-mouthed, vain, and violent creature. Oh, are you describing yourself, Lee? A vain and violent creature? I don't know if you were violent, but you sure were fucking vain, weren't you? You didn't get plastic surgery for that fucking nose. As that man had aged and become ill, his mind collapsed. The subconscious broke through the discipline of the conscious, and his daytime life extended to approximate more and more of his dream life. No political party, if it was to survive, could tolerate such a physically and mentally sick leader, surrounded by sycophants. I can't fucking pronounce that word. Eat my ears. And hiding in the sick room as a way of escape from problems. Such leaders pull their parties with them into the grave, unless a party managed to cut off the diseased limb. To Lee, politics are a battlefield, even if words and ideas, not bayonets, are the barbs. Barbs? No, that she can stand the most. But even he could not have predicted the shock his onslaught would create, nor the violent counterattack it provoked. Political parties, by their very nature, are made up of politically ambitious and competitive people, and not all the most able were admirers of Lee. By publishing Psychopathology in Politics, Lee had in fact given his enemies the excuse they needed to destroy him politically, and the weapon with which to achieve that goal. So, background to when he writes this, Savage is at that very moment, basically, dying of cancer, and there's upcoming, it's the 1939, I believe, Labour Party conference. Now, Lee really, really wants to be leader of the Labour Party because that means that he's Prime Minister, right? And for him, for all the other little greedy bastards, selfish, vain little shits with big fat fucking noses, I'm looking at you. You have a big fat fucking nose and a flat ass. Get out of my kitchen. He just, he wants the power, right? And Lee, so a few days before that, he writes this article. He thinks, everyone's going to see how wrong they are for backing Savage. And they'd be like, yeah, we'll vote Lee instead. And saying, it's saying that Savage was, quote, hiding in the sick room as a way of escape from problems. He's literally dying from cancer. I think it was, wait, let me just find out what type of cancer. He had colon cancer. What is colon cancer? Let me just see. Do you want to find out, Lee? Do you want to find out? Do you want to die of colon cancer? I greatly appreciate if you did. Yeah, so a growth of cells starting in the large intestine. So maybe after you kill Savage by, inducing all this stress from writing this fucking article about how much of a little, how, in your opinion, Savage has done jack shit for the country. Yeah, maybe cut open his stomach and have a look at the large intestine yourself. See if the growth of cells has actually happened and be like, oh yeah, he wasn't lying about the cancer, and maybe I shouldn't have been so cruel to a dead and dying man. Okay. Now, next, back to this book. As we can now see from that point, Lee's a little shit. Now, let's have a little reminder that back in the day, in the time that this probably was written, let me have a look, does it say when it was published? In 1973. When was King? Okay, so 10, 12 whole years before, maybe 13 whole years before, being gay was legal in New Zealand. And now, to be fair, very kind of popular, popular in the worst way possible, popular with all the wrong people. There was this idea that Michael Joseph Savage was gay, and this was also around when he was alive. It's still around now. Personally, I kind of think he just didn't really care. And if you want to put a label on it, maybe he was ace or arrow. Probably aromantic, just like he didn't give a shit, in my personal opinion. Maybe he was in love with the country, if there's a word for that, in love with helping people, and to be fair, I don't know as much as it is to know about queer people and like different terms and shit. Sorry, that was probably disrespectful to use a swear word when I was talking about that stuff. But firstly, I don't think we should be commenting on people's relationships, people's sexualities, anything to do with that, especially if they haven't come out to you yet, or if it's just an assumption. The same way, I don't think, as someone who has autism, yes, I'm very low on the spectrum, as the same way you shouldn't assume someone has a medical condition. Because I also suffer from anxiety, my mum suffers from depression. So that kind of stuff, I don't think you should assume that kind of stuff, because it is really being like, because there's girls in my class at school who are like, oh no, I'm not autistic, I'm not like so and so. It's like, it just feels kind of offensive. And I think the same thing goes for assuming someone's gender, especially in a time that's assuming someone's gender or sexuality. I know I said gender twice, but anyway, because I just think that it's disrespectful, and frankly quite rude, and especially for Lee to say it in the time that he did, when it was frowned upon. I believe that Norman Kirk was the Prime Minister at the time. No, he wasn't. Probably not. Maybe he was. But Norm Kirk had said stuff about how, later on, I do think to an extent Kirk was an okay Prime Minister, but, to be fair, I don't know enough about him, but he did say something along the lines of, homosexuality is a sin, which even well, that seems wrong, as a Catholic, I don't agree with. Anyway, that bit of the rant over, let me read an excerpt from John A. Lee's book, Political Notebooks. This is one of two excerpts. This is the only one about Savage being gay. It's titled Savage's Strange Relationship with. I think Michael Joseph Savage had none of the habit but much of the character of the homosexual. And I know it says none of the habit but much of the character. What makes the character of a gay person? And who are you to say that, John fucking Daly? He evaded women's company and seemed to shrink from the hand of all women. Whenever he was asked for a few words of biography, he always referred to his coming to New Zealand with Paddy Webb, who was later to be a Member of Parliament for Buller. Paddy was one man who could extract anything from Savage. This relationship almost suggested male attraction for Savage, not that he was physically homosexual, and certainly not that there was any homosexual response from Paddy, who was probably the greatest philanderer to be elected to the Parliament of New Zealand. In the 1920s, when Labour held the great Sunday night meetings in the Fuller Open Opera House, and later in the Strand Theatre in Auckland, Savage's landlady, an attractive woman then, she was married. Let me just say, she was married. I'm not sure if he means the older one or the younger one, but the older one was married. I'm just gonna say that. Savage was fearful of being seen alone with the lady. The moment the meeting ended, he would sprint for a tram. And he never seemed to want to go home on the same car. We used to think Joe's sprint strange. He was never a home builder, always a boarder. But I think we can say he was never a starboarder. Fuck you! There was a lack somewhere. In caucus he would show petulance rather than strength at opposition. His chin would quiver. To me he was in some ways an underdeveloped child. His mum had died when he was 5, maybe. Or maybe, don't comment on other people's lives, you... I remember going to 2 football matches with Paddy Webb, who had just been released from prison. One was on the Auckland Domain when Australia played New Zealand at league, and the other was when I prevailed upon him to come and kick off Carlaw Park. He went to the races. He refused to travel by air, and when he made his tour in 1938, his companion was Paddy Webb, maybe because he was dying and he wanted his friend. I'm not saying that was the case. I'm just saying, maybe, yeah. Somewhere I have said that Savage and Paddy were political Siamese twins, and that Paddy did the loving for the pair. Savage scared easily. I travelled over Southland with him, and at every sharp bend in the road he reached for security. Maybe drive the speed limit, John Haley. He suffered from the repercussions of some sort, and sometimes at night he would walk in his sleep and fill the air with extraordinary obscenities. Stop lying, please. It could be true, but I don't. Maybe he had some kind of condition. Don't judge people, John Haley. It's just stop airing out people's stuff. In the early days, I got on well with him, but as we started to consider a policy to end depression, I knew he was inhabiting textbooks which had lost their validity. We had different temperaments as well as minds. I could ferociously challenge a colleague's opinion and work with him 5 minutes later. However, differences of opinion with Savage resulted in long estrangements. Maybe he was like, I didn't know you were like that. Because I'm like that sometimes. If someone disagrees with me, yes, I do take it personally. And I take it to an extent that's like, having that opinion is wild. Why? Do you know the damages of that opinion? It makes me feel like shit. So maybe he was feeling like shit, and maybe he was like, I don't know how to come back from that, But, just judge the person. He sulked and he was unforgiving. He had not ventured enough into the world. He literally slept in holes of trees when he was going around New South Wales trying to find a job. It was either New South Wales or Victoria, and he was trying to find a job because there was no jobs. And but no. You think he had not ventured enough into the world. The boarder could not run the house. He had not grown up. Peter Fraser knew Savage's sulks. He told me that when Savage first wanted to stand for the mayoralty of Auckland, he had led a group in opposition. The result had been carried that the mayoralty had not been contested, and Savage had said, I'm not wasting my time, and walked out and left the organisation's activities for a long time. Fraser considered Savage a spoilt child when crossed. Okay. Now, I understand that there may be some truth in bits of it. I also understand that John A. Lee was a lying little shit. And I also understand that both Savage and Fraser were long dead when Lee wrote this. Another quote in the book, and I understand this is very long and nobody's going to sit through this. Another quote in the book is about this guy reading another one of Lee's books, Simple and Soapbox, and being like, now I see how bad the Labour Party was, and Lee ends it by being like, no one from the Labour Party argued with me over that because they knew I was telling the truth. Maybe they didn't want to engage with you. Maybe they knew that engaging with you would just add more fuel to the fire. I don't think that Lee was a good person. I understand that my GOAT, Michael Joseph Savage, may have had some faults, and that my second GOAT, Peter Fraser and Savage, may have butted heads at times. I still fully support them. I still think they're really cool people. One thing that I have a lot of respect for Fraser and Savage is, as far as I know, they never publicly butted heads. Whereas Lee, well, is like, just not only does he butt heads publicly with Savage, but he does it when Savages die. And I think it's no surprise that they kicked me out of the party. Anyway, thank you very much for sitting with me for all this time. Please hate Johnny Lee with your whole entire heart. And thank you for watching. I don't know.